The candles on the dinner table flickered, casting long shadows across the crisp white tablecloth and the polished silverware. Their glow caught on the edge of Isabella's diamond pendant, making it sparkle just like the smug smile spread across her face. My father, Raymond, tapped the stem of his wineglass, his cheeks flushed with pride and Cabernet. Your sister is successful and responsible. Unlike you, he announced loudly, raising the glass toward Isabella. His words sliced through the quiet dining room of our family home in Denver, Colorado. She doesn't need help from anyone. I sat there in silence, carefully cutting into my roasted chicken as if it were the only thing that mattered. Years of these dinners had taught me the discipline of a poker face: chew, swallow, and let the sting of his words slide down with the food. The smell of rosemary and garlic filled the room, but all I could taste was the bitterness of dismissal. Isabella, as always, was dressed like a magazine cover, a silky designer blouse in muted cream, her hair styled to perfection, and jewelry that whispered of wealth with every movement. Everything about her screamed success, or at least the image of it. She climbed the corporate ladder through hard work. Raymond continued, his voice swelling with admiration. Unlike your freelance dabbling. His lips curled slightly around those words, like they were spoiled milk. He glanced at me, then back to her. Look at her apartment, her car, her wardrobe. She's completely self-reliant. I swallowed hard, keeping my face neutral, though the words pierced me like needles. To him, my life's work was nothing more than computer games. For 2 years, I had sat through these dinner speeches while my father paraded Isabella's supposed achievements and buried mine under ridicule. She's making real money in retail management, he said firmly, sealing his praise as if it were a verdict. Not like Hannah sitting at home all day, playing on computers. Thank you, Dad. Isabella beamed, glowing under his spotlight. I've worked really hard to get where I am. It feels amazing to be financially independent. That was the moment I almost choked on my water. Financially independent. The same woman who had begged me for $4 just last week to cover her maxed out credit cards. My fork paused midair, and I set it down with care. The sound of silver hitting porcelain sharper than it should have been. Excellent, I said calmly, though my chest was burning. Then she won't be needing my $4 monthly support anymore. The words hung in the air, heavier than smoke, filling every corner of the dining room. Isabella's confident smile evaporated instantly, replaced by a flicker of panic she couldn't hide. Raymond froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Slowly, he turned his head toward me, confusion darkening his features. What did you just say? I met his eyes and repeated, steady and clear, Isabella won't need my monthly transfers anymore, since she's so successful and independent. The room shifted, the walls seemed closer, the candles taller, the silence almost unbearable. Isabella's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water, desperate for oxygen. The image she had spent years crafting, of independence, luxury, and corporate triumph, was shattering in front of the very man she had worked so hard to fool. Hannah, we agreed to keep that private, Isabella whispered, her voice barely audible, as though begging me to stitch the lie back together. Keep what private? Raymond demanded, his voice hardening as he scanned both our faces. The tension coiled tighter, ready to snap. Isabella's eyes darted wildly, searching for a way to contain the explosion. But she already knew. The dam had cracked. 2 years. 2 years of her letting him put me down. 2 years of me wiring her thousands each month while she posed in luxury apartments and smiled for social media. 2 years of Raymond holding her up as the shining example while dismissing me as a failure. The golden child's pedestal was wobbling, and I was the one kicking it loose. My name is Hannah Martinez, I said firmly, as if declaring myself not just to them but to the universe. I'm 32 years old, and I've been running a successful e-commerce business for the past 4 years. My voice didn't waver. I was done hiding. Raymond blinked, still trying to compute the words. Isabella clutched her glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. This isn't just a hobby, I continued, my voice sharp enough to slice through the silence. It's a business called Mountain Peak Essentials. I sell high-quality outdoor gear online, through my own site, through Amazon, Through multiple platforms. Last year alone, I generated $750,000 in revenue. The room stilled. The only sound the faint crackle of candle wax. For the first time in years. Raymond's gaze on me wasn't full of dismissal, it was disbelief. Maybe even fear. Isabella's carefully painted mask was crumbling. And all her years of pretending couldn't shield her now. Raymond's hand trembled as he set his fork down on the table. For a long moment, he just stared at me. As if the words I had spoken were in a foreign language he couldn't translate. 750,000, he finally repeated. His voice thin, nearly swallowed by the thick silence that had descended. Yes, I answered evenly, my eyes locked on Isabella. Her cheeks had lost all color. Her lipstick suddenly too red against her pale skin. 750,000 in gross revenue. My profit after expenses and taxes was around 400,000. The words were simple, factual, but they landed like grenades on the table. Isabella's hand slipped from her wineglass. And it tipped, spilling deep red liquid across the white tablecloth. She didn't move to stop it. She was frozen, caught in the wreckage of her own lies. Raymond leaned back in his chair, his face twisting as if he were watching his reality collapse brick by brick. You're telling me, he said slowly, that all this time, while I was praising Isabella for being responsible, you were actually the one carrying her? Yes, I said. The word was like steel. Every month, $4 wired into her account to keep her lifestyle afloat. Rent, car payments, credit cards, designer clothes, luxury dinners, all of it. Isabella suddenly sprang to life, her voice breaking as she tried to stitch the pieces back together. Dad, it's not what it sounds like. I was going to pay her back. I just needed time to get established. You don't understand. Established? Raymond snapped, his face flushing with anger. You told me you were promoted to district manager last year. You've been telling me for months about bonuses, raises, company retreats. You made me believe you were thriving. Isabella's shoulders sagged, and tears streaked her carefully applied makeup. I oversee 3 sales associates, she admitted in a whisper. That's all. The truth hit Raymond like a physical blow. His eyes narrowed, the proud sparkle gone, replaced by something darker, betrayal. So while I bragged to everyone about your promotions, you were living off your sister? While I told people Hannah needed to get her act together, you were the one drowning in debt? Isabella's tears fell harder. I just didn't want you to see me as a failure. I thought if I could just keep it together long enough, I'd eventually make it on my own. I never meant for it to go this far. I leaned forward, my tone calm but razor sharp. 2 years, Isabella. 2 years of lies. 2 years of letting Dad believe you were the success story while I was the cautionary tale. 2 years of me funding your illusion. Raymond turned toward me, his voice quieter now, laced with shame. And you, Hannah? You've been doing this all while I dismissed your work as a hobby? Yes, I said, my chest tight but steady. Because you never asked. You never wanted to know what I was building. You only wanted to see what you already believed. Raymond's eyes dropped to the broken wineglass on the table, shards glinting like the wreckage of his pride. He rubbed his forehead with both hands, muttering, all these years, I told everyone Isabella was the responsible one. I used her as an example for you. And the whole time, I was humiliating the daughter who was actually more successful than either of us imagined. The sound of Isabella's sobbing filled the room. She clutched a napkin, blotting her ruined mascara, her voice shaking. Please don't cut me off now. Hannah, my rent is due in 5 days. My credit cards, my car, my insurance. I can't do this without you. I pulled out my phone, unlocking it with calm precision. Maybe you should have thought about that before living a lie. With a few swipes, I opened my banking app. Transfers. Cancel recurring payment. The confirmation screen glowed bright. Done. I turned the phone around so Isabella could see. You're on your own now. Her gasp was sharp, panicked. You can't do this to me. Dad, you have to make her keep helping me. But Raymond's head snapped up. His eyes cold, his voice harder than steel. Sit down, Isabella. Enough. The command cut through her panic like a blade. She obeyed, collapsing back into her chair. I leaned back, the weight of years of resentment slowly lifting. I don't expect repayment, I said firmly, but I won't be used anymore. Not by you, Isabella, not by anyone. Raymond stared at me for a long, silent moment. His expression was unreadable, shifting between regret, disbelief, and something I had never seen in his eyes before, respect. Finally, he whispered, "Tell me about your business. All of it. I need to understand what I've been blind to for so long." For the first time in years, I allowed myself to smile. For a moment, I didn't answer him. I simply studied my father's face. The creases on his forehead. The veins standing out on his temple. This was the same man who had spent years reminding me of my failures. The same man who used Isabella as his model of success. Now, for the first time, there was no condescension in his tone. His voice was stripped bare, curious, almost desperate. "You really want to know?" I asked softly, my eyes narrowing just enough to remind him that his interest came years too late. "Yes," Raymond said firmly, straightening in his chair. "I want to understand what I've dismissed all this time." I folded my napkin and set it aside, pushing my plate forward as though clearing space for the truth. Mountain Peak Essentials started 4 years ago. I saw a gap in the outdoor gear market. You either had cheap products that fell apart after one trip or ridiculously overpriced gear meant for people with trust funds. Nothing existed in between. I decided to change that. Raymond leaned forward, his elbows on the table, listening in a way he had never done before. Even Isabella, her face streaked with mascara, lifted her head, her eyes wide as if she, too, was hearing this story for the first time. I researched manufacturers, real ones. Dad, the same factories that produce gear for the big brands. I built relationships, negotiated deals, created a private label line that delivers the same quality but at about 60% of the cost. People noticed, word spread, and within a year, I was moving serious volume. Raymond blinked, his lips parting slightly. Serious volume? My average order value is around $250. I explained, keeping my tone calm. Controlled. I process about 1,200 orders per month across all platforms. That's 300,000 a month. 3.6 million a year in gross revenue at my peak. Raymond actually stopped breathing for a second. I saw the calculation in his eyes. The disbelief as he tried to reconcile the daughter he had pictured lounging in pajamas with the woman who just casually outlined a multi-million-dollar business. Isabella shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clutching the ruined napkin in her hands. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice was hollow. She had no proof, no weapon left to use. "You've seen the transfers every month." "Isabella," I shot back, "do you really think someone who plays video games all day could afford to send you $4,000 every 30 days? For 2 years? Her face crumpled, and she looked away, ashamed. Raymond finally spoke, his voice low, almost reverent. "So, all this time, when I thought you were wasting your potential, you were actually building something extraordinary. Something I couldn't even see because it didn't fit into my definition of success." The bitterness in my chest surged. "No, Dad, you didn't want to see. You thought a title and a wardrobe mattered more than actual results. You praised Isabella's illusion and dismissed my reality." The words landed hard. Raymond rubbed his eyes with one hand, the lines of regret carving deeper into his face. "I was wrong," he admitted quietly. "So very wrong." The silence stretched, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't filled with denial or pretense. It was heavy with realization. Isabella's quiet sobs punctuated the air, each one a reminder of the facade that had just collapsed. "Tell me more," Raymond urged, his voice softer now. "How do you manage all of this? Where do you even run such an operation?" I hesitated, then decided to answer honestly. "I work from my apartment. I have a dedicated office space, but most of the logistics are handled through third-party fulfillment centers. My main warehouse is in Commerce City. They handle inventory storage, packing, and shipping. I manage supplier contracts, marketing campaigns, customer service, financial planning. It's a real company, Dad, not a hobby. Not a phase." He stared at me, stunned into silence. For the first time in years, he wasn't lecturing or judging. He was simply listening. Meanwhile, Isabella sat frozen, her world crumbling around her. She suddenly pulled out her phone, her hands trembling as she scrolled furiously. I knew what she was doing, looking for apartments, calculating how to downsize her life to fit her actual income. Her voice cracked when she spoke, barely audible. Without your help, I can't even make my credit card minimums. Maybe you shouldn't have built your entire life on lies and designer labels. I said sharply. Maybe you should have lived within your means instead of pretending to be someone you're not. She flinched, but said nothing. Raymond exhaled heavily, his shoulders sinking. I owe you an apology, Hannah. More than one. For years, I judged you by the wrong standards. I let appearances blind me. And in doing so, I put you down while lifting up the daughter who was deceiving me. His words stung, but they also healed something deep inside me. For the first time, I heard my father admit he had been wrong. Don't just apologize, I said firmly. Learn from it. Stop measuring worth by how it looks on the outside. Success isn't a wardrobe or a title, it's results, integrity, and resilience. Something Isabella never had. Isabella let out a sob, the sound breaking like glass. Her hands shook as she whispered. But Dad thought I was successful. No, I corrected coldly. Dad thought. Past tense. Now he knows the truth. Raymond didn't argue. He just sat there, looking at me as though truly seeing me for the first time in my life. Raymond stayed silent for a long while, his breathing heavy, his eyes fixed on the broken shards of the wineglass scattered across his plate. Each shard seemed to reflect a piece of his pride, shattered beyond repair. Finally, he lifted his gaze and looked directly at Isabella. His voice, low but sharp, carried the weight of every lie she had told. You've been lying to me for 2 years, he said. Isabella's lips trembled, her mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint gone wrong. Dad, please. I wasn't lying exactly. I was just managing the narrative. The words hung in the air, absurd and hollow. Raymond's expression darkened, his jaw tightening until it looked carved from stone. Managing the narrative? Is that what you call telling me you got a $15,000 Christmas bonus? Is that what you call fabricating promotions that never existed? I thought it would make you proud. Isabella whispered, her voice breaking. I thought if I could just keep the illusion alive long enough, I would eventually become the person you believed I was. I leaned forward, my voice calm but edged like a knife. Instead, you let Dad use me as an example of failure while you built your entire identity on money that wasn't yours. Isabella shook her head violently, her hair falling loose from its carefully styled waves. I didn't mean to hurt you, Hannah. I didn't know how to stop. Every time Dad bragged about me, every time people believed I was thriving, I felt trapped. I couldn't admit it wasn't true. Raymond slammed his palm against the table, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. And you were comfortable letting your sister foot the bill while I sat here humiliating her. Do you have any idea how many people I told that Hannah was the one who needed to get her act together? Do you know how foolish I feel now? Isabella's sobs grew louder. She pressed her face into her hands, her voice muffled but desperate. I'll pay her back. I swear. I'll get a second job. I'll cut expenses. I interrupted, my tone icy. Stop. You're not paying me back. Not because I don't deserve it, but because I don't want another promise you can't keep. The money is gone. Isabella, call it tuition for a life lesson you refuse to learn the easy way. Her hands dropped from her face, her eyes wide with panic. But what am I supposed to do? Everyone thinks I'm successful. What am I supposed to tell them? The truth, I said bluntly. Raymond nodded, his face stern. Tell them you've been living a lie funded by your sister's generosity. Tell them you deceived me. Deceived everyone. You owe Hannah honesty more than you owe her money. The room went still again. The weight of the words pressed down on all three of us. I could almost feel the walls absorbing the tension, the house itself straining under the truth that had been hidden for too long. Isabella's shoulders slumped, her body shaking. She was no longer the golden child, no longer the woman basking in my father's praise. She was a 28-year-old retail manager drowning in debt. Stripped of the illusions she had wrapped herself in like silk. For the first time in years, she looked small, fragile, Human. Raymond turned back to me. His eyes softer now. Hannah, I need to understand everything. I need to know how I got it so wrong. How I spent 2 years worshipping an illusion while dismissing what you had really built. I met his gaze steadily. You got it wrong because you valued appearances over substance. You saw Isabella's clothes, her apartment, her fake promotions, and you thought that meant success. You saw me working from home in jeans and assumed it meant failure. You never once asked about my results. You never gave me the chance to explain. His face tightened, and for the first time, I saw not just regret but shame. You're right, he admitted. I didn't want to listen. I thought I knew better. I thought success had to look a certain way. And that's why you were blind. I replied, because success doesn't always look like what you expect. Sometimes, it looks like someone you underestimated sitting at a laptop in a small apartment, quietly building an empire. The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't suffocating. It wasn't hostile. It was contemplative, filled with the weight of a new understanding settling into place. Isabella's quiet sobs were the only sound left. A reminder of the empire of lies that had crumbled in one night. Raymond finally pushed his chair back. Standing tall, his hands gripping the back of the seat. I owe you more than an apology. Hannah, I owe you respect. And I owe myself the humility to admit I've been a fool. I looked at him, my heart pounding. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. The air in the dining room was still charged, heavy as though the walls themselves were struggling to hold in the truth that had erupted. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional crackle of the candles burning low. But otherwise the house was quiet, eerily quiet. Raymond began pacing, his hand dragging across the back of each chair as he circled the table. His face was pale but his eyes were burning. Not with anger at me anymore, but with a bitter cocktail of embarrassment and revelation. Do you have any idea? He muttered. How many times I've stood in front of my colleagues, my neighbors, even my own sister, and bragged about Isabella's corporate climb. Do you know how many times I've told people that Hannah needs to get a real job, while it was Hannah who was funding the entire charade? The words stung, but not because they were untrue. They stung because of the years I had endured those comparisons in silence, swallowing the humiliation each time. Now, hearing him say it out loud, I realized just how warped his perception had been. Across the table, Isabella was scrolling frantically on her phone, her fingers shaking as she searched for rental listings. Her voice came out ragged, desperate. Look at this. 600 square feet for $1,500 a month. No dishwasher. Barely a closet. Dad, Hannah, I can't live like this. I arched an eyebrow. Welcome to reality, Isabella. Millions of people make do with far less. The only reason you thought you were above it was because you were burning through my money like it was an endless supply. Her head jerked up, eyes wide with horror. But I built a reputation. People see me as successful. What will they think if I suddenly start posting from a tiny apartment? Maybe they'll think you're human, I said coldly. Maybe they'll think you finally stopped lying. Raymond stopped pacing, turning on her sharply. Enough with the excuses. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. You let me hold you up as proof of success while you were nothing but dependent on your sister's generosity. His voice cracked with fury and shame. You made a fool of me, Isabella. Her tears came faster now. Dripping onto the phone she clutched like a lifeline. I didn't want you to see me as a failure. I thought if I just kept pretending, I'd eventually grow into the person you believed I was. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. But you didn't grow into it. You sank deeper. Instead of using my help to stabilize yourself, you used it as permission to dig the hole deeper, bigger apartment. More clothes, more debt. You didn't want independence. You wanted to perform it. Isabella's sobs filled the room again. Raymond sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. And you, Hannah, I dismissed you without ever asking. Every time you tried to explain what you did, I cut you off. I told you to get a real job. I thought I was guiding you. But I was blind. And worse, I was arrogant about it. You valued appearances, I said bluntly. And appearances were exactly what Isabella sold you. Meanwhile, I was sitting in front of a laptop, quietly building something real. Raymond's eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret in him. Tell me, he said hoarsely. Tell me exactly how you built it. I don't want to dismiss it again. I want to understand. For a moment, I just looked at him. The man who had lectured me countless times was finally ready to listen. It felt surreal. I saw a gap in the market. I began, my tone steady. Outdoor gear that was either cheap and useless or overpriced and elitist. I connected with manufacturers who already made high-quality products for big-name brands but were willing to do private label work. I branded my own line, priced it strategically, and marketed it to serious hikers and campers who wanted quality without being gouged. I built my own website, but I also tapped into Amazon and eBay to scale fast. It wasn't luck, Dad. It was work, day and night, for years. Raymond leaned in, listening as if each word were rewriting his understanding of me. Isabella, however, looked like each detail was another nail in the coffin of her carefully constructed persona. You grossed $3.5 million in your peak year, Raymond whispered, his math catching up with him. That's more than I made in 15 years as a principal. I nodded. And yet, all that time, you saw me as unemployed. That's the power of assumptions. Dad, they blind you. He sat back, exhaling heavily. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his water glass instead of wine this time. I was wrong, he said again, almost to himself. I was so damn wrong. For the first time in my life, I believed him. Raymond's admission hung in the air, heavier than the smell of roasted chicken that had long gone cold. For the first time in years, his words weren't laced with sarcasm or disappointment, they were raw, stripped bare, and almost painful to hear. Across the table, Isabella stared at him, her lips trembling. Dad, you can't just abandon me like this. She pleaded, her voice shrill with desperation. I've built my life around this image. My friends, my coworkers, everyone thinks I'm successful. If Hannah cuts me off now, everything collapses. I'll lose my apartment, my car, everything. Raymond turned to her, his eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. You should have thought about that 2 years ago when you decided to build a life on lies. You let me brag about you to everyone. You let me compare Hannah to you, use her as an example of failure, while you were secretly living off her money. Do you realize how humiliating that is for me? For this family? Isabella's tears spilled freely now, streaking black down her cheeks. I just wanted you to be proud of me, she whispered, every time you looked at Hannah with disappointment. I told myself I couldn't let you look at me the same way. Her words stung, but not in the way she meant them to. They revealed something darker, how much of our family dynamic was poisoned by comparison. Raymond had set us against each other for years, and Isabella had simply chosen to survive it with lies. You wanted Dad's pride more than you wanted honesty, I said evenly, and in the process, you used me. You let him call me worthless while I funded your lifestyle. She flinched, the truth hitting her harder than any insult ever could. Raymond rubbed his forehead, shaking his head slowly. Do you know how many times I told your Aunt Jennifer that Hannah needed to get her act together? Do you know how many people I've told that Isabella was the responsible one? And all along, it was Hannah carrying both of you. His voice cracked, the shame evident. I've been a fool, completely blind. At the mention of Aunt Jennifer, Isabella stiffened. She knew how unforgiving our aunt could be. Jennifer was a successful real estate developer, a woman who had always supported me quietly even when Raymond dismissed me. The thought of her learning the truth made Isabella's face crumble further. Dad, please don't tell her, Isabella begged, her voice frantic. She'll never respect me again. She'll tell everyone. Raymond's eyes narrowed. She deserves to know the truth. Everyone does. I've been lying to people for 2 years because of you. Panic flickered across Isabella's face. Her carefully constructed world was unraveling faster than she could gather the pieces. Meanwhile, I sat in silence, watching it all unfold. For years, I had been the one under fire. For years, I had sat through lectures about responsibility, success, and appearances. And now, the roles were reversed. The golden child's pedestal had collapsed. And the father who once dismissed me was finally seeing me clearly. Raymond turned back to me. His voice steadier now. Hannah, I want to make this right. I can't undo the years I spent belittling you. But I can start by acknowledging what you've accomplished. You've built something extraordinary, and I was too stubborn to see it. I'm proud of you. The words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened, and I had to look away for a moment to steady myself. For years, I had wanted to hear those words. For years, I had silently begged for his recognition. And now, here it was, almost too late, but not unwelcome. Thank you, I said quietly, my voice softer than I intended. But Isabella wasn't done. She pushed back her chair and stood. Her movements frantic, her eyes wild. No, this isn't fair. Hannah doesn't get to play the hero while I'm destroyed. Dad, you can't let her do this to me. You have to make her keep helping me. Sit down, Isabella, Raymond barked, his voice like thunder. She froze, her chest heaving. She had never heard him use that tone on her before. The golden child was no longer untouchable. Slowly, she sat back down, her face pale and hollow. I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. No one is destroying you. Isabella, you destroyed yourself the moment you chose lies over honesty. The only difference now is that the truth is finally in the open. The room fell silent again. But this time, it was a silence filled with finality. The illusions had been stripped away. The truth had been spoken. There was no going back. The days that followed that dinner felt like stepping into a new world. For the first time in years, my bank account wasn't bleeding $4 each month. That money, instead of vanishing into Isabella's bottomless pit of debt and indulgence, was reinvested into Mountain Peak Essentials. I expanded my product line, added new marketing campaigns, and began laying the groundwork to ship internationally. It was liberating, like cutting off an anchor I had dragged behind me for too long. But while my world was moving forward, Isabella's was collapsing. Within a week, she had been forced to leave her luxury apartment in Cherry Creek. The pristine high-rise with its concierge, rooftop gym, and glossy marble lobby no longer welcomed her. She moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from her retail job. The kind of place she used to sneer at. Her designer furniture didn't fit in the tiny space, so she sold most of it at a loss. The car, her precious luxury SUV with its $600 monthly payment, was repossessed when she missed 2 installments. I heard all of this not from Isabella herself. She was too ashamed to call me, but from Raymond. For weeks after the dinner, he phoned me almost daily. Each call a mixture of updates, questions, and apologies. She's drowning, he told me one evening. His voice heavy. But I suppose she needs to. Maybe it's the only way she'll ever learn. Her social media presence, once a carefully curated highlight reel of luxury and success, began to crumble too. The glossy photos of rooftop brunches, designer handbags, and European vacations were replaced by silence. For a while, she tried to keep the illusion alive by recycling old pictures, posting #Throwback Thursday and #Memories captions. But followers noticed. Comments shifted from admiration to suspicion. Where are you now? Didn't you just buy that new car? What happened to the promotion? The questions grew louder until Isabella made her accounts private. At work, the consequences were even harsher. Rumors spread among her coworkers that the district manager title she had bragged about didn't exist. Her boss, who had tolerated her exaggerated stories for the sake of appearances, started cutting her hours. Soon, she was working extra shifts just to scrape together enough for bills, something she had never imagined herself doing when she was living off me. Raymond, meanwhile, was enduring his own reckoning. For years, he had proudly told neighbors, colleagues, and extended family about Isabella's success while criticizing me. Now, he had to face the humiliation of admitting he'd been wrong. Your Aunt Jennifer laughed at me for 20 minutes straight, he confessed in one of our phone calls. His tone half shame, half respect. She told me I'd been an arrogant fool for not recognizing success when it was right in front of me. And for once, instead of brushing off my achievements, he asked questions, real questions. How do you decide which products to stock? What's your average customer profile? How do you manage shipping logistics? He wasn't pretending to understand, he was genuinely curious. Each conversation chipped away at the wall that had stood between us for years. As for Isabella, her calls to me became increasingly frantic. Please, Hannah, just until I get back on my feet. I'll pay you back this time. I swear, just a couple thousand to cover rent. Just this once. But each time, I told her no, calmly, firmly, with no malice in my voice. You need to face this on your own. Isabella, I won't rescue you anymore. The silence that followed those words was always deafening. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she cursed me, but eventually, she stopped asking. Watching her struggle wasn't satisfying, not in the way I thought it might be. The true satisfaction came not from her downfall, but from the shift in Raymond's eyes when he looked at me. For the first time in my life, he wasn't looking at me with disappointment. He was looking at me with respect. One evening, as we spoke on the phone, he said something I never thought I'd hear. Hannah, I'm proud of what you've built. And I'm ashamed that I couldn't see it before. I measured you by the wrong standards. But I see you now. Truly see you. Those words meant more to me than the money. More than the vindication. More than watching Isabella face her consequences. For years, I had been invisible in my own family. Now, the truth had forced my father's eyes open. And the truth, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. 3 weeks later, the Martinez family looked nothing like it had before that dinner. The hierarchy that once defined us, Isabella on a pedestal, me in the shadows, had been flipped upside down. I sat in my apartment office one quiet morning. The same modest space Raymond once dismissed as my playroom. My desk was cluttered with shipping invoices, product samples, and a whiteboard covered in notes about expanding into European markets. The $4 a month I no longer funneled into Isabella's account had already been put to work. I'd hired a marketing agency in Berlin, signed contracts with 2 new suppliers, and seen my sales climb even higher. Watching the numbers tick upward felt different now. It wasn't just growth. It was freedom. Raymond had called me again that morning. His voice calmer now, no longer laced with disbelief but with genuine pride. I told the guys at the golf club about your revenue. He admitted with a chuckle. They thought I was exaggerating. I had to show them your website. There was a pause. Then he added, softer, Hannah, I can't undo the years I spent doubting you. But I'm trying to make up for them now. I hope you know that. And I did. For the first time, I believed him. Isabella, on the other hand, was living in a very different reality. She had been forced to declare bankruptcy within 6 months. The mountain of credit card debt she'd racked up in her quest to look successful had crushed her. Her luxury wardrobe? Sold online to strangers. Her expensive car? Gone. The glossy apartment she flaunted on Instagram? Replaced by a dingy studio with peeling paint and no dishwasher. Her fall wasn't just financial, it was social. Friends who once envied her lifestyle stopped calling when the truth spread. Her carefully curated Instagram persona collapsed under the weight of questions she couldn't answer. One former coworker even commented publicly, "Hey, didn't you say you were promoted to district manager? What happened?" The humiliation was too much. Eventually, she locked all her accounts, disappearing from the digital stage she had once ruled. Raymond struggled, too, not financially, but socially. He had to eat his words. Over and over. To neighbors, relatives, and colleagues. Every time he admitted that Hannah, the daughter he'd criticized for years, was the real success story. While Isabella, the daughter he praised endlessly, had been living a lie. He winced. But he did it anyway. To his credit, he faced the humiliation head-on. Maybe as his way of atoning. The irony was almost poetic. For years, Raymond had weaponized the image of Isabella's success against me, using it to remind me of how I didn't measure up. Now, Isabella's downfall became a cautionary tale. And I, the quiet one, the overlooked one, was finally the daughter he admired. One evening, Raymond came over with a notebook in hand. "I want to understand how you scaled," he said, pulling up a chair at my kitchen table. "Not to give you advice. God knows I've done enough of that. But to actually learn." So I explained. I walked him through how I identified market gaps, negotiated with suppliers, managed margins, and built customer loyalty. He scribbled notes, nodding like a student in class. It was surreal, my father, the lifelong high school principal, finally learning from me. As for Isabella, I saw her only once in those weeks. She showed up at my apartment. Her eyes hollow, her designer clothes replaced by a plain sweater and jeans. She didn't ask for money this time. She just stood in my doorway and whispered, "I don't know who I am without the image I built." For a moment, I almost pitied her, but then I remembered the years of silence. The smug smiles, the way she let Raymond crush me with comparisons while I paid her bills. "You'll figure it out," I told her gently but firmly. "But you'll have to do it without me." Then I closed the door. The most satisfying part wasn't her downfall. It wasn't even Raymond's newfound respect. It was knowing that the truth had spoken louder than all the lies combined. For years, Isabella lived as the golden child, and I was the disappointment. But in the end, reality prevailed. And sometimes, I realized, the most powerful revenge isn't shouting or fighting, it's patience. Waiting long enough for the truth to burn away the illusions. Until all that's left is what was real all along. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop, watching my business grow. My phone buzzed with another order notification. Outside my window, Denver glittered under the night sky. For the first time in years, I felt completely free.